I had the privilege of looking at this whole scenario with Brexit and what the ramifications of Brexit will be and the effect on the whole global economic system, and primarily focusing on Europe and the UK. So one of the major things is that I had to look at imports and exports, meaning what are they taking into the country and what are they sending out of the country. So in terms of trade, now it came down to 11 out of the 27 EU countries are the countries that the UK actually trade with, which is Germany, France, Netherlands, Irish Republic, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Poland, Denmark. Yeah. So there's also a deficit in terms of trade. So the UK basically owes those countries for goods and services which they exchange with them. Really concentration on goods, because when I looked at the things that the UK actually takes into the country in terms of imports, it was like machinery, transport equipment, food and live animals, oil, miscellaneous manufacturing, material manufacturing. I mean, what does that all mean? It basically means that the 11 out of the 27 are now able to just trade amongst each other as an advantage over the UK. The only question is a matter of, do they actually need those goods and are they able to supply what is needed? Because they may not potentially, they may be actually producing similar things to the other 11 countries. So it might be just a small percentage of those products that are needed by each country in terms of trading amongst each other. That's why the UK was so important to the whole trade agreement. Now, the UK has said that it has the option of dealing with the WTO, because that's an alternative, and different alternatives like going to Asia, Norway, Switzerland, and so on as trade arrangements. My only concern, which I am putting forward, is that how are you going to get these countries to ramp up their capabilities if you already have constraints in terms of unemployment and production capabilities of those countries, in terms of those elements being exhausted, meaning that they're already making as much as they can make, and that's reflecting in their GDP. So how are you going to trade with them? Well, China potentially, there is a possibility of trading with China, but China only produces certain things, which is just mechanical and electrical products, and I mean stuff relating to manufacturing like textiles and so on. And the UK imports machinery, transport equipment, food and live animals, oil, miscellaneous manufacturing, ships, material manufacturers. Yeah. So basically, I can imagine what Theresa May has to be dealing with right now, because basically she has to be looking at the possibility that she has to be competing against those 11 EU countries for the a small space that's available globally in terms of trade, and the potential for trade is more than likely there with China. And in the event that she does get that space in terms of trading with these countries like Norway, Switzerland, and the Asian countries and so on, you have so many things to think about, like the fact that whether or not they're able to deal with that capability in terms of supplying what the needs are to cover approximately from three countries alone, which is the top three countries that the UK trades with. It's about 100 billion in terms of goods, even though those goods are even though the UK is 80% services in terms of the GDP that they generate. But that's very important because all these imports that are coming in from the EU, which is basically manufacturing and transport equipment to maintain those services. Potentially, if Theresa May is not able to get an agreement that it covers all these necessities that are needed by the UK, then you're looking at potentially machinery and transport, so disruption to services across the UK. You're also looking at an increase in electricity cost. And this is on the basis that, yes, she's coming to an arrangement with countries like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and United Arab Emirates, but those countries mainly produce like oil and a few a few mechanical, yeah, equipment based machinery type things. So it's a mainly oil based. So in terms of food and live animals and just basically maintaining the services industry, there is a whole disruption behind that. And the next issue is that UK alternative energy has been falling over the last 20 years. So if there's going to be a ramification on electricity costs, it may not come from the fact that the UK is able to access oil, but it may come from the fact that the UK is unable to access other elements that are supportive of the services industry. The next issue is the fact that they're thinking about trading with these other countries now. It's a distance issue because Europe was so close in proximity in terms of trade, then it minimized the cost of transport. So they have to look at the ships that they have. Are they capable of dealing with the distance element? What are the logistics in terms of, just getting around the travel distances and so on, and the cost ramifications on that, because there'll be an increase in cost depending on the distance that you're traveling. So they have to be looking at the whole rerouting and the whole mapping issue, as well as there might be an increase in maritime and professional needs, because if they're exporting goods to different distances and farther distances, then they need to potentially look at the skill sets that they have available in those areas to be able to facilitate that. However, with this whole free movement issue and the whole EU thing, the EU free movement and labor cost loss, they have to be looking at that potentially, the migratory patterns, meaning people moving from the UK and saying, okay, we're not going to stay here because we need to look at more options. And that low cost labor option that is being taken away, they have to think about that, because it will affect businesses and their capabilities in terms of just supplying goods and services. So with the disruption of the services plus the lack of availability of workers that are willing to take lower cost labor rates, then businesses won't be as able to produce goods and services at lower cost. So there's a hike increase or a price increase effect that could happen on the back of the goods and services and the food and just the whole supply chain of the UK in terms of disruption. So maybe if they're not capable of getting those goods as well from abroad, you have to remember there may be shortages in those goods, because it's not the same brand of goods that people are also used to in the home country, and the whole acceptance and of a different type of brand of food, whether or not the people like it. If they're taking machinery in from new countries, the testing and the credibility capabilities of those machines, and plus they have to come up with new contracts, and the fact that the EU has actually decided to make this move. Now, different countries are going to come with some contractual arrangements that are completely probably rigid in terms of saying, getting out clause and so on. And you have to also remember that there will be tariff charges. Now, what tariff charges are additional costs attached to you exporting your goods to another country or having goods come into your country that have tariffs on them. So they might need to negotiate and lower those tariffs on international goods so as to make themselves more acceptable abroad. So as to facilitate, more goods from abroad that they didn't have access to those channels. So that there will be a trade war potentially between Britain and other countries, because international countries, their goods may come down within the home market, but then it may be increased as well, because if they put higher tariffs on those international goods so their goods can compete, then they will probably face more competition abroad and harder constraints on their goods and higher tariffs on their goods. So there's just a whole ripple effect that's going on here, that the the UK is saying, oh, we can just leave the EU, but you're looking at food cost hikes, you're looking at business and operations disruptions in terms of increased costs, you're looking at the potential for in inflation potentially, you're looking at the currency devaluation as an issue, unemployment increase. It's just so many ramifications in terms of just the UK leaving the whole EU, even if it is successful in terms of trade agreements, there will be a ripple effect on the EU, the UK economy in terms of costs and just the adjustments of the citizens of the country as well. And I just want to say that, we just have to think our way through what's happening with the whole economic developments and structures. And it's important that while we think we use our research capabilities to find alternative measures, and just from people who reside in the country, if it is that you want this country to be a success, that if you have capabilities or attachments in your home country, it may be an advantage to developing countries right now on the market. But there's going to be a potential whole global disruption that needs to be addressed, and renegotiations need to be addressed between the EU and the UK in order for this to be either a palatable move, or it will be a move that will just have a complete ripple effect that could be advantageous to developing countries, or it may be just a whole downfall for the global economy. So this is Michelle Samuels for Improved TV. And I know I was a bit long today, but it's quite a bit of details. But we just want to keep you informed out there and keep you up to date so you can know the effects of what's going on in the economy, and just have you be empowered by all the research that we undertake. And just closing by saying peace out and have a fantastic night and take good care of yourselves.